So just to clarify too, there's a difference between this type of trust and then like a family trust. Like I have my trust set up for my family.
Yeah, that's different. That's not a funeral home. Yeah. Because I have a trust set up for my family in case I pass away. Everything is set up in the trust, yeah.
So just for everybody watching, the clarity is there's a bank trust and then there's a trust for your family that are completely two different.
You probably don't know this, but all industries have different secrets. In our industry, we have what you call body snatchers. You know what a body snatcher is? And a lot of families are influenced by this. The trust is owned by the individual, okay? The individual who bought the trust has the right to do what they want to do with it. And a trust is transferable. For example, if I have a trust here for a family, they decide they want to go to another funeral home. I can't transfer that money to the other funeral home, but I'm eligible to keep a percentage of the original trust before I transfer it. So yes, it can be transferred to other funeral homes, and the money is there to be transferred, and you are the owner of the trust. Pre-planning, there's several different types of pre-planning, and things in pre-planning, prepaid funeral services like insurance, pre-planning, and it's also a trust.
Here's something most people don't like to talk about, but absolutely should. When someone we love passes, everything changes. And yet, in the middle of shock, sorrow, grief, families are forced to make some of the most emotional and expensive decisions of their lives. What kind of service, burial, cremations, and what's the cost, and what's included? And most importantly, what did they want? And here's the truth. Saying goodbye is hard enough. It shouldn't come with confusion, debt, or pressure. But far too often, it does, especially when there's no plan in place. That's why today's conversation is so critical. I'm joined today by Sandra Clark, a deeply trusted funeral director and owner of the Sandra Clark Funeral Home in Dallas, Texas. Sandra has served families for over 30 years with grace, transparency, and compassion. She's seen the cost of poor planning, and she's helped thousands of families navigate this process with clarity, dignity, and often when they were at their most vulnerable moments. In a world where funeral services in places like LA can reach 18,000 or more, Sandra's mission has always been about value, honesty, and love, not performance. So today we're pulling back the curtain on what funerals really cost and what families really need, and why a little planning now can save so much heartache later, because when the what if happens, you'll wish you had. Sandra, I want to say thank you for joining us today. It's a blessing and an honor. I had a conversation actually, which is ironic that they called me back yesterday, and I'm not going to mention the funeral home name, but it's where my wife was buried at. And I had a conversation with the counselor who was actually promoted to supervisor, and I was talking to him about the podcast and he said in the conversations that we were having, and he was just talking about how important it was. But the interesting part was how they didn't want to do the podcast because, and his words were verbatim, they had to protect their name. And I just find that just interesting that a lot of, which I'm sure there's many more out there, obviously being one of the biggest funeral homes in LA, they were more concerned about protecting their name opposed to giving information to help people navigate this situation. And I'm very grateful that you have taken the time out to just give people the information that I know that they need and they're maybe confused about or even scared to talk about. So I thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Grief is scary, but it also is messy, practical, and it's full of decisions that no one wants to make on the hardest day. And Sandra, you've made this your life's work. So what inspired you to get into the funeral profession?
Well, over 40 years ago, I married a gentleman that was Navy retired, and Navy guy, and he was an engineer, and he came to me and said he wanted to do something different. In my family, I was programmed to be a teacher. I have like 14 aunts and 2 uncles. All of them are teachers, doctors, and what you call librarians. So I went to school to be a school teacher, and I would teach in school. But when I got married to this gentleman, he wanted to do something different. His family was in the business. They had been in funeral business for over 50 years. And I assumed that all families was close, like my family. So I advised him to go to mortuary school and get his license. So he went to mortuary school and got his license, graduated with honors, went to work for his uncle. They only wanted to pay him a minimum amount every week, and we had 4 kids. So our housekeeper at the time said, Mr. and Mrs. Clark, it's a gentleman losing his funeral home in Oak Cliff. It might not be what you want, but it's somewhere to start. So that night we went to this gentleman, offered him $500 to take his funeral home off the foreclosure list. And you know, the auctioneer was really mad the next day. So we paid all the back what was due, and we started a business. And when we started a business, I found out I had a passion for it. Even though I had been programmed to be a teacher all my life, because that was my family. But when we got in business, we kind of we saw how high other funeral homes was charging. So we created a package deal. We the first funeral home really in the United States, I think, created a package deal. It was like $16.99. That included a metal casket, pickup and embalming, and a service. And then, believe it or not, we found a cemetery that would work with us for $500. So we kind of took over Dallas. And after 3 years, at the time, my husband, I guess, decided he wouldn't be married anymore. And he said he wanted a divorce. So he told me that he'd take care of me and our 4 kids, and believe it or not, his mama too, because she was staying with us. I told him I never had anyone take care of me before. He just didn't know who I was. I would take the business and all the bills, and I would make it. And he told me, you'll never make it without me. I said, you just don't know who I am, do you? So we got a divorce, and I've been going ever since, and God has truly blessed me. And I moved from the little place that we were started on and moved to the facility, 12,000 2-acre facility of me now, through God's help. And I just wanted to tell you a real short story. I had a dream about this facility because everything I've done in this business has been built on my instincts and prayer and faith. So God has shown me this building I'm in right now in my dream. So at that time in the 80s, there weren't really any banks helping black businesses. It was only one bank that had one loan officer. So I went to this bank, the loan officer, and stood in this line where all the black entrepreneurs went. Believe it or not, you know what happened? This other black banker came out and said, Miss Clark, why are you in this line? I said, I'm trying to buy my funeral home, recently divorced. He said, how much you need? I said, well, I need like about $300,000. He said, Miss Clark, you're in the wrong line. I said, what you mean wrong line? He said, this banker only goes to 150. I go up to 300. I said, you do? He said, I know who you are and I know what you stand for. You come in my office. Quite natural. I was literally, going in this man's office. I went in there. He told me to tell him about what I was doing. He said, I tell you what, Miss Clark, I'm going to approve you for $250,000 and tell you where to go to get the other $50,000. I said, what do I have to do? By me being a beautiful, attractive woman that I know. I said, wait a minute, what do I have to do for this? He said, you don't do anything. I'm telling you, I'm going to give you $250,000 because I know who you are. I know your background. Then another thing that helped me, which you don't know, I was married to a former Dallas Cowboy, which was a first-round draft pick. So, and I was all these beauty queens, so I was Miss Dallas, Miss Everybody. So everybody pretty much knew who I was. So he had all this faith in me. He gave me the $250,000. He sent me over to Southern Dallas to get the other $50,000. And I got to say this, it sound real bad. It was like mostly black males and females. When I went over there, I had to give my whole history, my divorce papers, my birth certificate, all my taxes for $50,000. And here this bank had only given me $250,000. Didn't ask no questions. So I finally, after I went through all this process with them, I got the $50,000. So I got the $300,000. But let me tell you what the miracle was. I didn't have any money The down payment was $12,000. You know what God did that week? In my old building, He sent two families in the funeral home that week that paid $6,000 cash.
Mm.
That was my $12,000. You know what I'm saying? For my down payment. Wow. So I paid that on this funeral home. I got this building I'm in right now. Move in, not one penny. I didn't have nothing. I had 4 little kids that I was taking care of. And I said, oh God, I said, what am I going to do? But I moved in this building and I had it blessed. I went back to the banker. I said, sir, I said, I don't have no money. You say, Miss Clark, I got the building for you. I know your reputation. I know you're a hustler. I know you make it work. And I've been going ever since. That's how I have survived ever since. That's my miracle story right there.
That's amazing.
So that's how I got started. It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that
was all miracle and faith and prayer.
No, and I believe that God had a purpose and plan for you to help navigate people through this situation and through these situations because He trusted your heart, and He partners with people that has great stewardship. And I believe
it's been all faith, darling, faith and prayer.
So starting in the 80s, how have you seen the needs of families evolve since then?
Well, what has happened is now the pricing has really gone up, and families don't understand that. When I started in the 80s, for example, a concrete box, which is a grave liner, was $150. Today, the average price is, well, my price is $1,000, but most funeral homes is $1,500 to $2,000 for the same grave liner. So pricing is going up every year in the funeral industry. So that's why I advise people to check and do pre-need, sir.
Yeah. So what would you say families need the most in the first 24 to 72 hours once?
I think first they need to probably check and call their funeral home of their choice. And when they call their funeral home, the funeral director should advise them. First thing you should do, offer your condolences to them. Let them know that you need to contact the chaplain, that you want, Sandra Clark Funeral Home, what funeral home you want. And once you contact the chaplain, I would let them know. The chaplain would call the funeral home. A lot of families say, Miss Clark, I need to come right now and pick up my dad, my mom. I say, it's against the law for me to come. I can't come until the hospital call. And once the hospital call, I can come. Then you come into the funeral home, and I'll go over the prices on whatever you can afford for the funeral service. So that is the first thing you need to do is, contact, let the hospital or the medical examiner know what funeral home you want. You contact that funeral home. Then when you call the funeral home, you let them know the funeral director should set a time and date for you to come in, or either let them know what is convenient for you. Because in my book over here, the family is always right. My son always tell me, Mama, you got everybody small. I said, yeah, they ask me how high to jump. I'm going to jump. Because that's a family that need help. That's the way I feel.
So how has families' expectations and traditions changed from the 80s?
Well, what has happened was, back in the day, it was mostly older generation making funeral arrangements, and they were more traditional. And they were more, like, say, honest and upfront. And they had insurance. But nowadays, it's the new generation. And they don't, I can't say all of them, maybe 50% of them wants the money and they cremate their loved one, which is sad. You have your mother, your grandmother work all their lives, and you just gonna cremate them and keep the money. That's the new generation right now.
And when it comes to making decisions, do you see a lot of people, and what's your experience with people making a lot of decisions under grief when it comes to making and pressure?
I have to really be honest, sir. You probably don't know this, but all industries have different secrets. In our industry, we have what you call body snatchers. You know what a body snatcher is? A body snatcher is someone get paid by a funeral home to talk to that family to send them to the family that they want so they can get paid. That's what a body snatcher is. And a lot of families are influenced by this. And it's sad to say, it's mostly ministers. It's
Wow.
sad. But nowadays it is. The new generation, they get a commission. They recommend, hey, you need to go to this funeral home because they're going to take care of you. Even though this funeral home they send the body to has a bad reputation and higher than other funeral homes that offer better services.
So it's good for people to always do their due diligence, call multiple homes, or come have a recommendation. I know that we had a recommendation from a family friend through a funeral home when it came to my wife. But even thinking back, which he was great and he gave me a lot of knowledge and guidance, but I still believe that I should have maybe done more due diligence. But I mean, in that time, it was hard because I was dealing with
I
a
know you
lot.
just lost your wife and you're not
Yeah.
thinking, but it's good that you did talk to a family friend, and hopefully this family friend might have had experience with the funeral home. But I suggest, but a lot of people don't realize that someone's going to die because it's sudden most of the time. So I advise people just start reading literature or call different funeral homes and see what's going on. And then also in Texas, it's required by law to put your prices of your own line. So, a lot of people don't want to think about death, but it's good to check out, everything before death occurs, or if you have a close friend to talk to,
And why do you think people are so afraid or avoid talking about this?
because they think they're going to live forever. And they don't realize that we're only here on this earth for a short period of time. And they really need to prepare. And prepare. You just need to prepare, and there's so many different ways to prepare. And I'm just so sorry people don't realize. And a lot of times when people come into the funeral home here, they're afraid. But when they come in here and say, oh, Miss Clark, it's so pleasant here till we feel comfortable. And I try to encourage people to come back and do a pre-need or take care of something before something actually happened. And believe it or not, a lot of them do come back that I talk to.
And during pre-planning, what do you think are some of the things that are often overlooked?
Okay, well, in pre-planning, there's several different types of pre-planning. And things in pre-planning, prepaid funeral services like insurance, pre-planning, and it's also a trust. In insurance pre-planning, they charge you according to your age and your health. And it's a certain amount you pay each month. And for example, if you want a $10,000 policy and your funeral bill is 5 or 8,000, you're able to get some money back on the insurance pre-plan. On a trust pre-planning, you pay dollar for dollar. There's no health requirements. There's no special down payment. You pay whatever you can afford. And what's included in this is a casket, pickup, embalming, and the services. But what just recently happened is they did have cash advance items added to pre-planning. And what I mean by cash advance items, those are like flowers, police escort, and programs. For example, if your programs cost you $300 today and you die 10 years from now and the programs are $500, you only pay the difference of $200. This law just came in effect last year where we can add cash advances, okay? So a lot of people think it's just a casket included in service, but you got to pick the body up, you got to embalm it, you got to dress it, you got to take it to the cemetery, then you have viewing and visitation you want. So a lot of people don't know all that's included.
So,
And to answer your questions for an embalming, embalming is not required by law when you're going to have immediate burial, or you're going to have a no viewing, or you're going to have direct cremation. A lot of funeral homes that are not straight will say, hey, this body has to be embalmed to make the extra money. But reality is not a law requiring embalming unless you're going to have viewing and visitations or a funeral service with people.
and just to touch back on the insurance policy, because this was something that I didn't know and I learned through the process. and maybe people don't know this as well. So when you have an insurance policy, and this was something that, which is, I'm curious to hear your take on this. So this is something that happened with me. So the funeral home that I initially dealt with, the life insurance policy, they did the paperwork to get the life insurance policy to start doing the funeral and planning services. But what happened was, when he realized I was going to be flying, well, when I was going to be flying my wife back to Los Angeles, the funeral home in LA, they didn't allow me to use my life insurance policy because they said that the funeral home that I guess contacted the company who became the beneficiary at that moment to be able to get the funds to do the funeral process, they wouldn't accept my insurance policy. So, so they wouldn't end up accepting it. And the funeral director was like, well, I don't know why they won't accept it from here in Houston. So because they wouldn't accept it, that policy ended up getting locked up. And I had to, which is crazy, I had to borrow against my policy and pay him to borrow the money to bury my wife because they wouldn't accept the policy. And so I didn't have that money. I didn't have access to that money. So I had to pay him a fee to borrow the money. And then when the policy came in, he took his fee and paid for the services to them.
Oh, that don't make sense, darling. Every funeral home can take an insurance policy as long as the policy is over 2 years old and it covers expenses. Now, a lot of families are duking the way they'll sign their whole policy over to the funeral home. But in reality here, Sandra Clark, if your funeral bill is $5,000, $6,000, what's important is on the assignment form. When you sign the assignment form to send the money to the funeral home, the funeral home should send a copy of the funeral bill and the assignment in. And the insurance company should cut 2 checks, which is no problem. Cut a check for the funeral bill amount, send it to the funeral home, and the other amount to the beneficiary. But nowadays, I don't understand what that funeral home was doing because they have what you call right now funding companies. And what a funding company is for funeral homes, you call that funding company. For funeral homes, you send in a copy of the policy, the beneficiary, and the insurance company will pay that funding company. That funding company will pay the funeral home up front for a fee from 3 to 5%. So the money is there right now. The funeral home has the money immediately for a fee. So I don't understand why they did that to you, but California has never been on the up and up. I've always had problems in California. So it's no excuse for not accepting your policy as long as it was verified as being a good policy. It was over 2 years old and you were the beneficiary. So I don't understand unless they just needed the money and wanted the money and didn't want to do the paperwork. That's my own reason I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and I didn't understand it either.
And see, you were in grief, so you was trying to take care of your wife, so you didn't have anybody to advise you. I guarantee you say, well, I'll get a lawyer and find out why you can't take my policy. I guarantee they would have taken the policy, but you weren't thinking about that.
I wasn't.
Like in grief, you don't be.
Yeah, I absolutely wasn't. And that is something that for people who are watching, even in this, and I think that's another cost to consider, is having legal representation help navigate you through this situation, because there are going to be things that come up that you are just not knowledgeable on. And
that's correct.
And you're going to need that guidance
to take advantage of you, darling.
Yeah.
Especially if they know how much money you got. Yeah. That's why it's actually required here in Texas that when you walk in a funeral home, they're supposed to give you a general price list of all their services and pricing. And a lot of them don't do that.
And so why has, over the years, what I'm sure you've seen a lot, and price transparency has become something that is very important to you. Why is that such a big deal in your line of work?
Well, it's a big deal because funeral homes, sorry to say, can take advantage of what it is, okay? A lot of funeral homes have different pricing, like they have package deals, they have general pricing, okay? For example, like me, I have general price lists, which I announce on my website. But when a family come in, I have package deals. So it's just important to let them know what you have to offer. A lot of funeral homes don't because they want to find out how much money you have first. Then they present the different price lists to you, okay?
Yeah.
For example, if you high profile, they going to give you the high profile price list, darling.
Yeah. So that's why I guess, and maybe you can give the clarification on this misconception where people probably think that affordable means less care versus full service means upsell.
No, sir, that's not correct because here we have a service for $3,500, and that includes pickup and embalming and a casket, viewing a visitation. And it's the same casket that the other funeral home, we all buy caskets from the same company, okay? And the caskets are on top of the line. So it's just that different funeral homes have different pricing for their service. You know, you walk into my funeral home, what you get for $3,500 across the street is $6,000 for the same service. So that's why it's good to shop around to compare, and don't let them think you, hey, oh, this casket is better than that casket. But no, all funeral homes get their caskets from the same company, you know. And the top of the line caskets, yeah. But there are casket companies now that have discounted caskets that look like the top of the line caskets. And they're charging, these funeral homes are charging the same price for these off shelf caskets as they do for the expensive caskets, okay? So it's just a lot in funeral industry that you really need to check out if you can beforehand, because at the time of death, it's hard to do that, okay?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that having that set plan and having that list and knowing what to compare based upon, because obviously regionally it's different. And when it comes to Dallas versus Los Angeles, and like for instance, Forest Lawn has a package where it's their elegant package at Forest Lawn, and that can run, that starts at $18,000 before burial costs are even added, and then that can go even higher. And I know that I'm sure
You
you've
must
seen.
think too, the land is higher in Los Angeles too. That has a
Absolutely.
lot to do with it too.
Okay. Yep. Absolutely. And I think, which we will, I'm going to talk about that as far as regional and why pricing is going to be different. Because, you know, sometimes people don't understand, like if you're burying somebody in LA, New York, in comparison to Dallas, there's going to be a difference in costs, like you just said,
Correct.
based upon the land. And I'm sure when you've seen families come in and talk to you, or you've even consulted with a family over the phone, they were shocked by what they were asked to pay, especially in major cities. Why do you think that gap is so wide? Is it primarily just because of the land?
Well, I think the reason why the prices are different of state than here is one of the reasons because the economics there, you know, the cost of living is higher, you know, but some of them are ridiculous higher there, you know. But I think it has to do with the cost of living up there and like utilities and just general overall services there. It costs more probably to run a funeral home in Los Angeles than it does here in Dallas. But I think that some of the prices are higher than what they're supposed to be. For example, when I get a body, I'm trying to get a body shipped in from Los Angeles to Dallas. They want to charge me $4,500 just to pick up an embalming. That's not the airline. The airline is $770. So it's like about $6,000 for me to get a body from Los Angeles to here. That's not even a casket included. And for me to ship a body from Dallas to Los Angeles, only $1,595. So that's the third of the cost. So it's just the regions and what the expenses are. But I do say that they are higher than what they should be. You know, some funeral homes are just greedy. A lot of them are owned by corporations. Some independent owners have problems, so they have to try to do the best they can. But a lot have to do with the economics in the area, sir.
And which I agree. And do you think also too in these areas, maybe some of the contribution to the increase in funeral costs has to do with maybe taking advantage of people while they're emotional, so they end up doing emotional overspending due to their grief?
Now, that is so true. I agree with you. If you come in there and the family's really upset and they're supposed to trust this funeral director. But this funeral director, if it's a corporation, thinking about their quota they have to make, okay? So therefore, they're going to oversell that family to make their quota to get what they need to do. Now, if it's an independent funeral home like me, you have versatility where you can help a family, if like I do, with what they can afford. Because by me owning my facility, if I want to give my funeral where I can charge what I want to charge. But all funeral homes don't have that advantage. A lot of them try to meet their quota up and try to keep their job, trying to look good in front of their boss, and the family suffer. And in reality, the family should look at the price list and ask questions. But if you got tears in your eye and crying, emotional, upset, you can't really see what the prices are because say, this is mama. I want mama to have the best.
Yeah.
And they keep saying, well, this is your mama. And they take advantage of the psych game. I've seen it happen.
So, which I'm sure you would encourage this, how have you seen it work out better for families that are pre-planned versus planning under pressure?
Okay, pre-planning, your prices are frozen. If you have a pre-planned funeral, it's by law that your service is frozen, which includes your casket, pickup, and embalming, and your services. That's frozen. If it's an old pre-need, that's all. But if it's a new pre-need, like I said, it's 2 years ago, we have cash advance items, and all you got to do is pay the difference in those. Now, pre-plan is quite the best way to go. If you go in there don't have a pre-plan, they charge you today's prices. And today's prices in different areas can be a whole lot. They'll take your insurance policy plus whatever else money you have. Okay? They do that.
They'll take the dog food money, car note money,
Yeah.
and everything else, huh?
Yeah.
How
You have
would you?
$10,000 funeral, they still save on $500 more.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. What advice would you give to families to start the conversation in their household for pre-planning, being that this is such a taboo conversation when it comes to death?
Well, I suggest the best time to do it, if you have someone in your family that passed away and you see them trying to raise money, do GoFundMe, which is no good no more. That's just a ripoff right now. Yeah, I suggest that's the best time to have a conversation in your family. Just, say, hey, we just lost Uncle so-and-so, Mother so-and-so. We had to scrape the money up to bury. Why not us try to check on doing a prepaid funeral, just for example, I had this one guy. I think I'm the only black funeral home here have a trust account or a trust account. It's like my own bank account, and it's insured like the banks, like the state of banking commission, where it's up to $250,000 insured. And with a pre-need trust, no health questions, no specific down payment. I had this one young man came to say, Miss Clark, I don't have very much money, but the doctor just told my sister that she was dying of lung cancer. What can I do? I said, well, darling, I said, I can't do an insurance policy on her because she has a terminal illness, but I do have a trust account. He said, what is that? I said, you can pay whatever you can afford to pay a month. Do you know that guy paid $5 a week? He came in every week. He worked for the center, paid $5 a week. And then he moved it up to $50 a week. And his sister lived at least 5 years after that. It was already paid for. He said, Miss Clark, if I would have known God was going to have her live, I could have took out the insurance policy. I said, but you did the best you could. You took out this trust. And when your sister passed away, it was already paid for. He just paid $5 a week. So it's no excuse for people not to get a prepaid, because there's two ways to do it. There's a trust. Most funeral homes don't have a trust. I must say I'm blessed.
This is the first.
I'm
this is the first time I've heard about that.
I don't have no felony. I'm straight with the law. Okay. Now I have a permit. I get my permit renewed every year and get audited every year. That's why I have a trust. I have my own bank. You pay whatever you pay weekly on your funeral bill. It's dollar for dollar until it's paid out. Now on the insurance, you have to pay according to your age and your health to live at least 2 years. Okay, that's the difference.
So could you And we talked about this before. I think it's fascinating, and I've never heard of a trust through a
I know
funeral home.
most people can't have them. This was from the old school days. I got mine about 40 years ago. Well, nowadays, a lot of funeral homes can't get it because you have to be by the book, okay? You have to be approved by the state of Texas, by the banking commission, by the insurance commission. They audit you every year. I have my trust account. You have your permit number and everything, and it's insured up to 250,000. So if I go out of business, the money is there. And I'll tell you a little something I'm proud of. A lot of funeral homes have lost their trust, okay? And guess who they called to pick them up from the state of Texas? Who you think they will call? Miss Clark, will you take this trust account? I say, baby, I can't afford that. You know what they tell me? Miss Clark, let's send a letter in the bill, $1, and you can get it. It's two prominent funeral homes I got they trust. I only paid $1 for it. It's worth over $3 or $4 million. But I can't get the money until that person dies. And guess what? You have to present a death certificate, okay? When you present your death certificate, they pay me. But I have inherited a lot of trusts of funeral homes who lost their trust because you got to be on the up and up. You got to submit that money to the bank commission. You can't keep that money. The reason why some funeral homes lost their trust because they keep the money and don't put it in the bank account, okay? We had one funeral home, which is sad, 100 years old down in San Antonio. This lady, her husband died, the owner, and she trusted her goddaughter or granddaughter, whatever, and she took the money that the people was paying on trust and spent it. And now she's lost everything because they did an audit and found out 400,000 was missing. So you really got to be careful when you're taking other people's money and report it, to the state.
Just for everybody that's watching, because this is new information and this is very interesting. What does a bank license and a trust have to do with each other?
Well, it protects your money, and then it protects the family in case that funeral home go out of business. The money is there, and you're insured by the state, okay? They audit you every year to determine if everything is in order. I get audited every year, and they have to see if everything is in order. And they ask for like maybe 3 or 4 files. I had to pull those files and send them a copy of it and show them the payments. And so far, I've been passing my audits for the past 40 years. So that's why the bank and the insurance companies involved, because it's protecting you. In case I will go out of business, your money is still there. And like I said, I inherited 3 other trusts from other funeral homes that went out of business. I have the trusts here with me and Sandra Clark. And I have to honor what they've already sold, okay? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, I do. And so can only a funeral home own a trust when it comes to how your setup is, or can an individual own a trust that's insured by the bank and insurance companies? And do they have to get licenses through the bank and to be able to own that trust?
Okay, now the trust is owned by the individual, okay? The individual who bought the trust has the right to do what they want to do with it. And a trust is transferable. For example, if I have a trust here for a family, they decide they want to go to another funeral home, I can transfer that money to the other funeral home. But I'm eligible to keep a percentage of the original trust before I transfer it. So yes, it can be transferred to other funeral homes, and the money is there to be transferred. And you are the owner of the trust. I think I mentioned you before. I have 2 communities, well, three communities I deal with. I think I told you I had the Ethiopian community where I set up a trust for them. Whereas 30 years ago, I noticed they were going around collecting money from each member in the families to pay for their loved one. That's why I suggested them they get with the state to do a trust. So now the Ethiopian community have a funded trust with the state, whereas families in that community pay so much on their trust every year or every month. And when someone in their family dies, they come here to Sandra Clark, and I in turn submit a death certificate and a funeral bill to the community. They wire the money to me for the funeral bill and also for the cemetery, because I set up the thing they like to bury this specific cemetery. I suggested they go to this specific cemetery and buy $300,000 for land and demand that they have a separate section, and they get offer opening and closing of the grave at half price since they're paying all this money. And that's a trust. They are in control of the trust. And actually the person who takes it out owns the trust, and they could do what they want to do with it. But the money has, in this particular case, the money has to go to the funeral home or to the cemetery. Now, in the other trust that I own, families can transfer their trust in the funeral home they want to, but I'm allowed to keep a percentage of the original amount before I transfer it. But you actually own whoever took it out. They own their trust, but they can't do nothing with it until they die, okay? And whoever the beneficiary is.
And
that's in a trust.
and I'm making an assumption that you keep a percentage because you are managing the trust.
Yes, that's why I have an audit every year. They check, the bank audit me every year for the trust to make sure the money is there and make sure it's correct.
And do you only get that percentage once they pass, or do
No,
you
when
get a
they
percentage
pass.
when they pass?
Only when they pass. I only get paid when they pass away. If I do the funeral service, then I submit a death certificate to the bank, and the bank will mail the money to me or wire the money to me.
But if they transfer that trust to another funeral home while they're
They
still
get the
living,
money.
but you still get a percentage, correct?
I get a percentage.
Because you've been managing it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, that, I mean,
That's good, isn't it?
yeah, this is, I know 99% of people do not know about that. I didn't even know that
I
this
know
was
because
even
most
possible.
funeral homes are not eligible. Like I say, you have to be, you have to be almost God to have a trust. You have to be on the up and up. It's all kind of background checks, everything, And I must admit, a lot of funeral homes, owners and people don't have a straight record, sir.
So just to clarify too, there's a difference between this type of trust and then like a family trust. Like I have my trust set up for my family.
Yeah, that's different. That's not a funeral home. Yeah. Because I have a trust set up for my family in case I pass away. Everything is set up in the trust. Yeah.
So just for everybody watching, there's the clarity is there's a bank trust and then there's a trust for your
Family.
family that are
Yes,
completely
that's
two
correct.
different. So
You have to go to a lawyer yourself, your family trust to put things in order. And I suggest everybody do that because a lot of times when you pass away, they don't know where everything is. I have a lot of families come in here and say, I just don't know where daddy kept this or mama kept that. And now is the time to be checking on it. Believe it or not, 99% of the time when someone dies and call me, just the other day, the lady called and say, Ms. Clark, I think my daddy got a pre-need with you. This man is dead now, you think? And he been sick on hospital all this time and you just wait till he die to call to verify. This is what I'm saying to myself. If you see someone is sick or have terminal illness, you need to get on top of it and find out where their paperwork is. And it's not that you want them to die, but you need to be aware of what's going on. And also, I got to recommend, especially older people, you have a bank account, you need to go to that bank account, put POD, paid on death. Can't nobody get your money, baby, until you die. But if you don't put POD on your account, it's have to go to court, go to a lawyer. The lawyer going to take half of it. Let me tell you what, I got personal experience right now. My oldest son died December the 17th. I have 4 kids. I didn't have no idea that my son had a savings account in the bank. Here I am, a funeral director, preaching every day to families. Put POD on your account in case someone dies. Do this, do that. Here my own son didn't have
sorry,
POD on this account. I'm going to do probate in his cell just to get the money he have. Here I am paying him he's been sick for a couple of years. I was still paying him a salary, taking care of him. I have no idea he was saving all this money in his account. Certain banks you can go to, like I'll call the bank thing Chase Bank. I can go to Chase Bank with an affidavit and a funeral bill and a death certificate. They will give me up to $5,000 on a person's funeral. So I went to the bank with my son's death certificate and his funeral bill. They gave me the $5,000. They say, Miss Clark. I said, what? You say, Tiger got a lot more money in the account. I said, how much? We can't tell you. It's against the law. You got to go to probate court. I said, you mean tell my son got money in the account I didn't know about? So I've been dealing with probate court since January. It's been hell, okay? Trying to get the situation. It's been hell going to probate court. And what could avoid all this was POD, paid on death.
and how do they know who to pay that out to?
It's going to give the bank the name. For example, my son, they could have said, he had me on everything else. I don't know why he had me on a bank account. I guess because, in the business, I'm always doing stuff. But POD, paid on death, you give the person name. You could have put POD, paid my mother, Sandra Clark. Like you have, I told my other sons and my daughter, I'm going to kill your butt if you don't have me on, because I ain't going through this with you guys. I'm teaching this every day, and my own family don't start doing it. But a lot of old people are scared somebody going to take their money.
Yeah.
But can't nobody take your money until you're dead. But when you're dead, the lawyer going to take all of it if you don't have POD on your account. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. And because, man, so this is great. And because there's one, I want to jump back to one thing, but I want to actually stay on this because you said something about going to Chase with a death certificate and they'll give up to $5,000
with an affidavit, a funeral bill, and a death certificate. Yes. And the other money will have to go to probate court, either if your name POD, they will give it to you.
Okay. Wow.
And all banks have that POD, paid on death. Can't nobody get your money or touch your money until you're dead. And you name that person's name at the bank. And that'll cut out the lawyer and cut out probate.
Okay. That is.
You can be the beneficiary on everything, baby. If your name not on that bank account, you got to go to probate court. And I'm a witness.
Wow. That was knowledge right there. And I know that.
Well, I've gone through everything in 50 years, so I can tell you a whole lot of things.
Those are simple things that I believe that people can do to start preparing themselves. And before I move on to this next question that I had, I wanted to just double back really quick for clarification. A personal family trust, you go to a lawyer, which I understand. And then to do a bank trust, you would have to go through the banking commission to get a bank trust.
No, you go to the funeral home that has a permit. And it's insured by the banking commission. Like I have a permit number. My permit number allows me to write trust. I have special paperwork that I have to write on and submit it to my banking company. But you have to go to a funeral home that has a trust. And if you go in there with your money, you need to say, what is your trust number? Just don't go in there and give them $10,000 and they don't have a trust number, not insured. Even they give you a trust number, just call the state bank commission and say, is this person licensed to sell pre-need trust?
Awesome.
Don't trust anybody. I'm just telling you.
Thank you. Yep. That was the clarification that I wanted to ask. So you touched on GoFundMe's and
GoFundMe's dead, baby.
Why do people think that GoFundMe's are the solution to their funeral costs and expenses?
A lot of families think GoFundMe is the answer, but it's been used so much, it's played itself out. But GoFundMe is, I guess, good for big incidents like, for example, Floyd, he had a special. If you have GoFundMe set up with a bank, I say it's good, a special account with a bank. But if it's like individual, you can forget that money, okay? But if you set it up legitimate with a bank and people see that it's legitimate with a bank, you can get some money because you know that money will go toward the funeral bill. But if it's just an individual set up or GoFundMe, that's to pay their bills and to rip you off. Now, I say 98%. I won't say 100%. Because there are some good people out there, but there are more bad people than good people.
Because do GoFundMe's actually cover? Do they actually end up covering the funeral?
It depends on what funeral home you go to and what the pricing are.
Yeah.
Here, my average funeral is like, I have a package deal which is $49.95, $5,000, and most funeral homes don't have that. In that package deal is a metal casket, pickup, embalming, flowers, police escort, hearse, and limo, and take the body to the cemetery. That's $49.95.
And at another funeral home, that average price,
that same thing will be $10,000, $12,000 with the same casket. But my services, I'm known for, I have to say this, I'm known for my bodies look like they're lifelike. Everybody say, oh, Ms. Clark, they're going to wake up. But I have a dedicated staff that takes time. By me being a woman, darling, I buy hair, nails, everything. If a family bring a dress in or a suit I don't like, guess what, darling? I'm going to go down to K&G and buy a new suit. Or go to this dress shop and get a new dress. Just tell the family, hey, anything with my name on it, it just has to look look nice. If you don't like it, I'll go back to what you have. Oh no, Miss Clark, he liked it. She looked good. He looked good. That's just what it is.
So if you had to give me 2 words on what Sandra's philosophy of service would be, what would that be?
Perfection. And I love my clients. I just have the passion for it. I just want to make everybody feel good or feel at home and comfortable. And then I try to offer something that's affordable to a family. And I've been blessed with great instincts. If a family come in and say, Miss Clark, I don't have any money, I say, well, baby, my instincts tell me that person is good. I say, well, just tell me what you have. I mean, just be honest with me. We can cut out a whole lot of stuff. You just tell me what money you think you have. Well, Miss Clark, we have $3,000. I said, well, I tell you what I can do for $3,000. You can take it or leave it. A lot of times they say, oh, Miss Clark, that'll be great. We'll do that. Then I have some people where I have bad instincts. And the red flag is, darling, you know what the red flag is? They come and say they don't have no money. What the red flag you think is? They want 15 death certificates. Yeah. If you want 15 death certificates, baby, that's money somewhere.
Yeah.
So don't come in here and BS me about you ain't got no money. You want 15 death certificates.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the red flag.
No, that's
really a red flag.
And I believe that legacy should be peace, not pressure, and not chaos. And hopefully when people listen to this, you've given a lot of information that they need to consider when they start thinking about legacy and planning for their family's legacy. As I land this plane, Sandra, I want to thank you not just for your decades of service, but reminding us that the goodbye doesn't have to be chaotic. It can be meaningful, and it can be peaceful, and it can be thoughtfully done. And
you don't have to have a lot of money. You know?
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, you might not be able to control when the what if happens, but you can absolutely control how ready your family will be. And this isn't about doom and gloom. It's about dignity. It's about making sure the people you love aren't stuck asking questions because you've already given them the answers. And if you are ready or you are thinking about having this conversation, once again, I encourage all of our listeners to check out the whenwouldhavehappens.com to grab your legacy deck that helps families have these conversations and make tough conversations a lot more lighthearted. It's full of questions that spark real topics, real talk, and it helps your families prepare together, because when the would have happens will happens, you would have wished you had. Sandra, how can people reach you if they wanted to either maybe get consulted by you, they wanted to maybe reach out to your home as far as services, or get guidance? Like, how can people reach you?
Well, they can reach me 24 hours at 214-371-2600. That's 214-371-2600. I must mention this. I am the ship out queen, darling. When I say ship out queen, I ship out over the world.
Okay.
Everywhere. Nigeria, Ethiopia, anywhere. I have people ship bodies here to Dallas just for me to ship out the country. But that's my forte there. I specialize in multicultural. I take all families. But you always can reach me. And I'm a full service funeral home. I have my own crematory. You get, I have to say this. You get your loved one ashes. You don't get community ashes down the street. You get your loved one ashes here.
Yeah.
I do have a cemetery. You get buried there in the cemetery, okay? But you can reach me, though, at 214-371-2600. You can email me as S. Clark. That's SCLARK, F like Frank, H like House, at sbcglobal.net. I'm always available 24 hours, though.
Awesome. And I will have this information down as well, where people are able to just click on so they can reach out to you with your website, email, phone number.
And I talk to everyone, I shoot straight. Anybody tell you, any funeral director in the United States, they all know me. Sandra Clark is not going to be here. She's going to shoot straight. Let's hope they don't put a contract out on me.
Let's not.
I'm going to tell you like it is.
Yeah, because we got to protect Sandra at all costs. So thank you, everybody. Once again, I'm your host, Jason Brown, and we will see you next time right here on the When Would Have Happens podcast. Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate you.
Thank you.